So my name's Will. I'm a trustee at Bridgend Farmhouse. It's a charity and a cooperative based in southeast Edinburgh.
So my name is Henry Wilson and I'm a trustee at Bridgend Farmhouse.
And the project we are talking about is the volunteer build of an eco-bothy in the old barn of the farmhouse.
The Bridgend team has been converting an old farm into a community-owned centre for learning, eating and entertainment, where they can work and grow together to develop a flourishing community. They started converting the old farmhouse into their hub of operations and then set their sights on converting the piggery into a bothy.
The bothy was an embryonic idea at that stage because the farmhouse at that stage wasn't renovated. So they were looking for, what could we have to, we need to have something.
So at that point, we were approached by CEDA, Scottish Ecological Design Association, who were interested in working with a community group to do their CEDA Build project, which was linking up architects and builders and communities to create their own sustainable building.
I'm Gloria Lowe. I'm involved with Bridgend since a decade ago maybe, through the Scottish Ecological Design Association, and we helped to run consultations with the community with Bridgend to look at the use of the whole site and what the community wants to see developed here.
So this was a perfect fit for us. It allowed people to be involved in the construction of a new facility and a new project on site from the inception all the way to completion. So the first event for us was a design day for the bothy in the old farmhouse, with lots of different practical things. You could make them and you could draw them and you could talk about them. And so all the design, what it would look like. So, but we had food at that and we just kind of made it quite a social event as well. And so just making a big thing of that and everyone through it, inviting 2 or 3 of their friends or people they knew. That's how it helped us to start with a buzz and a bit of a wider community to begin with.
Hi, I'm Jacob Marks. I use pronouns he and him, and I was involved in the group from October 2019. At the time I was in supported accommodation because I'd just got out of hospital. I suffer from bipolar and I've been hospitalised quite a few times, and I was looking for new starts and things to get my life back together, and I started off volunteering in the garden, and then that's when I heard about the Bothy project.
What we are is a bottom-up organisation. We aim to involve the community in all decisions, right? But obviously, top-down is the norm. The king says, the proletariat or whatever do. That's not the way it works.
It's definitely something which is the heart of what we're trying to do at Bridgend, and that is ensuring that the members and the volunteers have an active and democratic say and influence over the projects that they're involved in and in the organisation. For example, with the bothy, the setting up or the establishing of a working group which would meet regularly and was open to anyone who was interested in the project was important, because it then meant that all the decisions from whether we would have a stove or what type of design or what type of material the insulation would be, to how we would go about raising the funds or when we would be running the session. Anyone who felt that they would like to participate in those was able to. So it was democratic in that sense.
Obviously, you can't have everybody's ideas, and it's really difficult to say, well, yes to this idea, no to that idea. But every idea is valid. But in the end of the day, I think there is a sort of consensus sort of decision-making model that Bridgend runs. I don't know if you're familiar with the consensus decision-making model, but instead of saying just take a vote of first past the post, you get 51% of people liking the idea and then 49 people really, really grumpy. The consensus decision-making model means that at least everybody is okay with it. It might not be first choice for everybody, but it's definitely not a no-go zone for, you know, anyone, and people can actually still buy into it.
That to me is essential because it ensures that we hear different people's voices and different people's experiences, and people know that there is a means and a way that they can influence how the developments of it are.
I hadn't originally wanted to be too much involved with the decision making, but as things went on, as jobs came up, you had to make decisions about the job you were doing at the time. Later on, there was the Bothy Building meetings, which were to do with fundraising and the logistics of the project. So I attended a couple of those just to get my opinion in.
But the way that it is developed has definitely nurtured a strong collective ownership. As you know, as I've said, it's we own the land. We spent a long time campaigning for that. We transferred to a model where people are shared owners of the organisation, and we have these different working group structures where people can influence and have control over the decisions on different projects that we're doing within the organisation. And with that brings a real sense of pride.
It's like everybody's baby, you know, and when we take photographs or the photographs get posted on the WhatsApp group and we see where it came from the foundations, it's really satisfying to see.
So from the consultations, we've looked at what the community wanted, looked at the kind of users, kind of functions they would want the community to have, and decided that the Bothy would actually help train lots of people with new skills.
We were doing it because we wanted an asset that could be used for community benefit, and it was seen as a really good thing to do in terms of, you know, not only in terms of, you know, just having an asset, but in the journey to get to that asset. The training was really, really important. In fact, I would say the realization of an asset through the training of the people to produce that asset is a primary driver here.
But it was quite difficult in a way to kind of, for some funders to get the concept that both this was a build, you know, it was a kind of capital build project, a construction project, but it was also a training project, and that the two were essential to each other. So we weren't getting in contractors to deliver the build, but it was volunteers who were doing all the training themselves with the support of a build manager.
My name's Simon Hakim. I'm the founder and director of a charity called Greenworks Scotland Limited.
And when I started the project, Simon, the project manager or the foreman, he seems to be the boss man anyway. I don't know what his title is, but he's the boss man.
My role in the project is project manager, build manager, various guises through the years, but I'm ostensibly now a build manager.
He made me feel very welcome, introduced me to the rest of the crew, and it was very much hands-on, everybody in the same boat, digging in and doing what we can.
The type of material that we're using, doing an eco-bothy, you can't buy it in B&Q. There's no shopping list. So we're trying to utilize traditional materials and techniques and get people who are willing to train in those in order to achieve the thing.
Not a great deal of technical power tool use or anything like that. It was all very simple, hands-on tools, hammers, nails, that sort of work.
I've learned a lot of skills through the project. I mean, when I first started, I had done craft and design at school, so I knew my way around the tools, saws and hammers and things like that, but it had been a number of years, so there was always somebody on hand to give tips about how to hold it properly, the way to stand for safety and things like that, and to get the best use out of the tools.
Yes, I've partaken in raising the frame. That was a training session. That was a surprise. You know, sometimes when you talk about training, you think that's not really training. I know what to do. You just need to lift a few frames. Nothing could be further from the truth. You don't know you need trade half the time. You need trade. So I don't think there's a day I go down to Bridgend or even in the Bothy, wherever, when I don't get trained in something.
And a lot of the training is day by day as well. So I will sit there and work with somebody one-to-one, or I'll work there with one to a group, and go, this is how we put nails into a piece of wood. And as though that might sound very simple, in some places you actually need to do it in a particular kind of way. So I will go through it 100 times till that person feels comfortable with it.
They just treated everybody the same, you know. It was like we're all equals, and you know, I know a skill that I'm going to pass on to you, and then you'll be able to teach somebody hopefully that comes along on another day.
I've never done lime render before, so that is actually really, really good fun. Arthur, who came to teach us, is absolutely great to work with, and he's a really good teacher. So we all took turns to spray and, you know, do all those things with the lime and look at how to do the mix and things like that. So that's very new to me and was really, really good fun.
But then, you know, the bothy has a fantastic roof. It's got a living roof on it. So I'm down there one day and, you know, yeah, get involved in that and whatever, and then figure out how difficult it is to load 4 tons of soil up onto a roof. You know, it's difficult, and there's a way in which you can make it less difficult.
So the physical and practical involvement plus this democratic decision-making influence, and that extended to other elements as well, like the fundraising. You know, so it meant that people had more collective ownership of needing to raise the funds for it.
It has gone through several rounds of fundraising, simply because I think, and this is my assessment in hindsight, there wasn't an appreciation of exactly how costly some of the materials might turn out to be.
I think that there was an initial budget that, you know we could do so much with. The business group and the funding group was actually really helpful and managed to, you know, pull extra resources or however tie up with local builders and so on and get extra funding, extra supplies, material on the way as well.
What I will say is that, you know, the people who were really driving the project, they didn't look at the need for more money or more funds as a problem. They usually came with the solution where the board would have to say yes or no to the decision.
We were really more designing and also, you know, trying to fit with their requirements. So they feed us what funding they raised and so on, and we'll try to sort of tailor the project to that.
There have been many points in the project where we have been in serious doubt as to whether we could keep things going.
Even though volunteers may come up with a project, you find that when it actually comes to doing it, back to my earlier point about you don't know what you don't know when you're in training, they don't know what that was going to mean for them in order to achieve that, and suddenly, shall we say, the enthusiasm wanes. So it's keeping the enthusiasm.
Things like COVID and other challenges like the building warrant, for example, or planning permission, have meant that things have sometimes stopped and start.
There are wet days and there are cold days, and there are days where the tasks seem too big to achieve. But actually, if you can just keep going and also realize that sometimes you have to stop and rest and review what you've done. Nothing's too difficult that it can't be broken down into its component parts and put together again or rebuilt. But it is a sense of humour and a sense of sort of like collective endeavour which actually gets people through most of the time. And celebrating sometimes, celebrating what's actually happened. You know, what we achieved today, what we achieved this month, what we achieved this year.
It is hard, you know, and volunteers are experiencing struggles in their life, but what we need to know is what they want to do now, what they want to give, and what they can, and what they want to learn, and what they want to get out of it. So that enables a kind of, people to feel not defined by something like homelessness, for example, or addiction, but they can instead be defined by who they are now and what they can give to this community, or how they can be part of it.
It's been a real help for me, you know, because like I say, I came out of hospital and I was starting from scratch again, new accommodation, new town, and everything like that, and it gave me a purpose, and It allowed me to make new friends and feel some worth, feel some self-worth and doing something that's worthwhile for the future and for the community.
We have benefited in our project by being inclusive, by having the majority of volunteers female and of a wide range of ages. And I would say these are things that are very important. If you make your project as inclusive as possible and open as possible, you will do better, I think, than having one set of volunteers, all male, of a certain age, from a certain background. Don't give you a creative project. They give you a project from one particular mindset sometimes.
In a way, because the courses and the training and all that sort of stuff is running, it then gives the site a bit more purpose and footfall, and slowly sort of reaching the community even more than before. And obviously we don't have a marketing budget and things like that, right? So in a lot of ways, the Bothy is like a flagship, and it actually signal that something's happening here, so that people come and find out or join in on a training course or something. So it helps to get sort of noticed, I guess.
So for other groups who are sort of have got a concept in mind or an idea of something that they want to do together, well, absolutely have faith that you can do it. I mean, whether it's blind faith or belief, that certainly carries you through. That certainly carried us through.
So the very first thing to ensure is that people really want it. So don't ever try to hide how difficult something is going to be from the start.
It's always good to have a very good vision, and as long as that vision is something that can catch people's imagination and can energize other people, including funders and the community, where there's a will, there's always a way.
Don't be daunted by how long it might take. If your time scale is 1 week or 1 year or 10 years, see that through in stages. Speak to the funders, speak to the people who've done it already, and speak to the local community, because those are the people that are actually going to help you.
So just any way to build a community where people have strengthened their relationships, had a laugh together, got to know each other, found common ground, and can feel like, yeah, we could give this a go together. And it's just so much easier then when you've built some trust with someone that you can then have to fill out a funding application together, or I don't know, design a bothy together or something. So
people's pulling together creates that synergy that I don't think even at the beginning of the project people could sort of imagine. So you've got to take that first step and do the consultations and find out before you can actually feel the synergy. And once it's there, then you can take the next step.
Don't be daunted, because it started off, we didn't have all the funding, we didn't have all the people, and at first it was very much, a learning curve for everybody, and it's a massive project.
But also, there's a huge thing that you have to do throughout every project, and you have to say thank you often and more often. And if you think you haven't said it often enough, you haven't. Just you need to thank people who are giving up their time for free as volunteers. They appreciate someone saying thank you, and it's a very simple thing, but it works.
If people want to do this kind of project, I think they should definitely give it a go. Society now needs more sociocratic, democratic communities being developed. and our capitalist society doesn't encourage that as much as it ought to. And the more we can knit community together, the better. And this kind of project is really valuable for that.